Welcome back, everyone, to the show that gives you the chance to let off some steam and to get things off your chest as we cover the topics that matter to you, the people of the UK. Now, today we welcome three very special guests to the show. We have my regular Danny from Spain. We have the ever popular social justice campaigner and YouTuber Laura Nina. If you haven't seen her channel, make sure you get out there and check it out. And we also welcome back Ruan Eduardo Pereira, who is a former Met police officer and who specialises in criminology and justice at the University of East London. He also brings a point of view that's usually the opposite to my panel, so it should be an interesting one. Welcome back to the show, Ruan, Laura and Danny. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Got a couple of very important topics to try and get through this afternoon. The first one this week, raising its ugly, very ugly head again, of course, is knife crime, not only in London, but right across the country. And Ruan, I know that you've done a lot of research and, you know, you're what I would call an expert in the field. I think the first thing we'll all agree on is, our sincere condolences go to the family of a beautiful young man whose life has been tragically lost this week. A shock to everyone and every parent in the nation. What have you made of this week's event, Ruan? Because it's not just London, is it?
No, it's knife crime. We've all got skin in the game on this one, is the term I'd use. In fact, 15 years ago, 1 month and 1 hour ago, my mentee was stabbed, murdered in Reading as a result of a knife crime incident. And that young man himself had been involved in knife crime. He was 18 years old and had sadly been involved in a knife crime incident and had gone to youth offending centre, where, alas, he was sexually assaulted by some of the wardens. So it is something that's very personal to me. It's personal to an awful lot of people. Jean-Claude was a absolute fantastic sportsman, would have done really well. In football was his issue. And although he'd been involved in knife crime, he was not a violent person. He was not. And to the extent that we would sit watching, I was his mentor, my mentee, we would sit watching cricket and he would tell me off for my exuberance in a desire for the ball to hit the batsman in the forehead, etc. He thought that was totally unsporting, totally incorrect. You know, violence and was not right. But he ended up, sadly, being involved in knife crime himself and then becoming a victim of. So this is something that is, let's say that was 15 years ago, 1 month and 1 hour when he died. Only 5 years ago, we had an upsurge in knife crime again. And you probably remember all the stories back from 5 years ago. In fact, the chap who used to be on EastEnders, does the amazing documentaries, did an entire program about knife crime in London.
Yeah.
And it's all related to gangs. So there is no easy answer, but it's something we desperately need to tackle. And it's also something I'm going to put back to yourselves and say, would you like to be involved in something with regard to knife crime, reducing knife crime?
Absolutely. We've spoken about that before, Ruan, and 100% I will do anything that would help potentially that. I mean, Danny, I know that the latest incident is in an area that you know very well. I mean, that area is not known for that sort of issues, is it? I mean, we can't talk about this case in particular now because it's obviously the gentleman's been charged. I say gentleman, I use that term very loosely. But we're talking about knife crime in general. That area is not really not a rough place, is it, Danny, or is it?
Everywhere's got their little pockets of little bits and bobs of areas of where things are not as good as other parts of the area. But in general, Hainault is reasonably a nice area, upbeat area. It's quite close to Chigwell. It comes under the Redbridge Authority. And as I say, I've actually got interest in Hainault, so business interest in Hainault. So yeah, I know a little bit about it. As I say, I don't go there very often, but from what I know, Hainault is quite a nice. Fairlop is quite a nice area.
Laura, as a mum, you can only imagine what that boy's parents must be going through right now. And it's an emotion that, unfortunately, far too many mums are having to suddenly face and deal with across the country, but London in particular. I mean, how does it make you feel as a mum, the thought of such a heinous crime?
It's there's no words to explain. It's frightening. I was actually speaking to my daughter one day. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and she was, I think it's Islington area. I don't remember now because it was quite a few years ago, and I think, like you say, maybe 4 years ago. And she was driving, and she stopped at the zebra crossing, and there was a group of 18, 20-year-olds, I suppose, walking across the zebra crossing carrying knives. She said it was like so big, machete knives, and she was just looking like, say, how can this be at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so blatant about it and and she's she reported it, a few other people reported it, but that's just a natural thing that goes on. And as a mother, a father, a grandparent, aunts, uncles, and I believe that there are ways to tackle this, but I'm sorry, they don't want to do it, and they'd rather invest money in things that are not protecting us and let us carry on losing our children or our loved ones to knife crimes. There's not enough money or care for the powers that be to stop this. In fact, they're bringing it more into our areas and not providing the safety for us and our children. So yeah, of course we are all on high alert. I'm glad I'm out of London, but equally it's going to be everywhere.
Ruan, what's
Yes.
your take on stop and search?
I've worked in the arena of stop and search for many years now and researched it. Now, stop and search is very controversial.
Should it be, though? Should it be controversial?
It's how it's used. It shouldn't be controversial. Now, the communities I've worked with that are most affected by knife crime, the mums, etc., mums, dads, and even youngsters will happily support the appropriate use of stop and search.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, though, stop and search in other arenas has been abused as a tactic.
By the police.
Yes, by the police. I have to say, by the police. And that is the part of the problem. Stop and search has almost become a KPI for performance in some places. So the person who has the most stop and searches is clearly the most effective.
Yeah,
but of course,
figures. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you follow the figures through this, and I can throw statistics actually where I'm not going to do, but if you actually look at the business case for stop and search, the reason for the search, the reason for the stop, and then the actual, if there's a conviction, it then goes down below 1% that they actually match up. So you can already understand that communities feel you stopped me for that reason, but you've just charged me for that reason.
Yeah.
Most of the charges regard stop and search of someone's failed the aptitude test.
Yeah.
Breach of the peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that can be used very effectively. Unfortunately, because of its history, there's no trust in it. But it is something that needs to be used far more effectively. Here in Scotland, for example, in London, in England, Wales, an officer by themselves can undertake stop and search. In Scotland, it has to be corroborated by the reason for the stop, etc.
Yeah.
But let me take you back to knife crime. We are living in a time, we've not faced knife crime like this since 1946, which was the height of knife crime. And so there has been an explosion over the last 5-7 years, well, 10 years, I would suggest, of such incidents, and we need to be looking at the reasons why.
I think a lot of the viewers, Ron, and I have to be honest here, otherwise you just lose all credibility with your viewers. You know, I have to be honest and say that I think my viewers would say that has gone hand in hand with mass immigration, illegal migration, and people from other cultures where the use of knives is far more acceptable and maybe part of their everyday life where they come from. Would you accept that?
No, I wouldn't, because as I highlighted, we haven't seen this level of knife crime since 1946. The level of migration then was considerably less.
It was probably zero, but we had just finished the World War.
Absolutely, and there's your reason. So it's about reasons. It's about people are committing knife crimes for reasons. The young man who I was the mentor of did not commit a knife crime because he woke up in the morning to commit a knife crime. It was a very sad circumstance that led to it, but actually he stabbed the person who'd been bullying him for many, many years. That's not an excuse at all, but there was a reason behind it. So we've got to start looking seriously at causes and then dealing with those causes. Merely dealing with a punitive way, more police on the streets, more punitive sentences, these don't work.
I get what you're saying. The only problem with that is, I mean, it could take us 100 years or so to get to the bottom of these problems, the root causes, and try to put them right. So, you know, if we look, you know, we go back to what Laura was saying a minute ago, Ruan, you know, where is this brazenness coming from, this flexing, where youngsters just don't seem to fear the law? I mean, Christ, when I was a lad, the thought of walking down the road with a machete, I'd have been nicked in a heartbeat. But these people tend to think that they can get away with it. Where does that flexing come from?
Well, I would suggest we need, again, this has happened before in the UK. I have highlighted before. Scotland had the highest knife crime per capita in Europe. Violent crime, knife crime. You know, Scotland was a world champion. And in a 15-year period, they have reduced that significantly, and they have done that by tackling the causes. Now, most of the offenders were once, and as Laura will be aware, many offenders were once victims, and they cross over all the time. So someone isn't a victim, they become an offender, then they're a victim again, etc., etc., etc. And it's about stopping that cycle. Now, in Scotland, what they did is look at the causes, and they couldn't racialize it in Scotland because it was 96% of the population of Scotland are white. And the areas that some of the gangs were operating in Scotland, these gangs went back 100 years, 150 years. They were sectarian, etc. But if you looked at the demographics of the offenders and the victims, they were the same. They were amongst the poorest in society. They were the ones with the lowest education, lowest opportunities, etc. All the demographic indices of deprivation impacted on them. And if you look at the communities affected today in England and Wales, and 61% of knife crime, such crimes, are committed in the southeast. If you look at the demographics of those committing and the victims, again, they're in the same areas that they would have found in Scotland, i.e. the poorest, those with the least amounts of opportunities, etc. So the answer is not easy, but it is possible to tackle this. There hasn't been a desire to tackle it.
I think we're talking about London, Paul, right? Again, I go back to what I said to you the other day. A friend of mine had a boxing gym, quite a big one, had a lot of following. Factory East, it was called. His name was Jack, won't mention his surname. Went to Sadiq Khan, our amazing London mayor, for financial backing, and was blatantly told he doesn't back things like that. And that was solely to stop knife and gun crime and the gang culture. My friend that runs it had a bit of a past. He rehabilitated himself and spent an awful lot of time in prison many years ago. But all of that aside, there was no interest whatsoever from Khan and Co. So let's just hope he gets in again today, shall we? Because he's an absolute disgrace. And that was active. That was actively there to stop the predominant call. That what they wanted to do was to stop knife and gun crime and the gang culture. And he was completely rejected. Because they've got too many other things to pay for, haven't they? Like, sort of congestion charge cameras and that.
I would support what Danny's said, almost all Danny said. Obviously, I want Sadiq to get in because of the alternative, but I would certainly agree that the situation you've just highlighted there, where someone's actually set up a boxing group, whatever it may be, that's exactly what's required in these communities.
Not according to Sadiq, it's not.
Well, I would disagree with him vehemently because the evidence shows that's exactly what you need. The problem is in the Met area, the Metropolitan Police area, is the Metropolitan Police themselves have not had a proactive approach to this. They've had a reactive approach.
Ron, I just don't think anybody gives a shit. I'm going to be honest.
Well, I have to say, if you look at the communities who are most affected, I would tend to agree that society doesn't really give the proverbial for those communities. I'm going to agree with you. But let me go back a bit. Can I just add something? If you look at the statistics, it's the same percentage of, if you look at ethnicity-wise, and across the whole of England and Wales, it's the same percentage of black youngsters and white youngsters who are involved in these.
Yeah, but then it's not the same percentage of black and white youngsters that live in the country, is it?
Oh no! I'm just saying that's.
So
but if you look at Democrats,
pro rata, it's the statistics don't match up.
And the victims, Paul.
No.
The victims.
And the victims.
Predominantly.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, predominantly.
The victims in London are predominantly black.
Yeah.
The gangs that are involved in this, yes, high percentage are black, and I'm using black in a inclusive political sense. So that is a reality, but they're also living in the poorest areas. And
Laura, look, people used to say that London is a place that you can't wait to visit. Now people say London's a place you can't wait to get out of.
I would like to say though, Rowan, I do, as you say, that we didn't have knife crime so bad since 1946. But whenever we talk about statistics, the one thing I have learned in the last 3 years is that you can't rely on statistics, because statistics are created by the people that pay the most. And that's something that I have learned, that how easily they can be flawed. In the 1940s, what we did have was always, and we still have it, a divide between the rich and the poor. And we had a lot of poverty. The further back in England we go, we had a lot of poverty. And it's very evident that we still have a lot of poverty. The only thing that's happened now is that we've been educated a bit more. We should be more educated because, there's more access to technology, there's access to different cultures, there's this, that, and the other. But we've got more police than we ever had. But yet there's an increase in everything, including knife crimes, the increase in violence, illnesses, whatever you want to, where the technology is moving forward, but we're not. So I know firsthand statistics mean nothing unless someone's paying for those statistics to benefit whoever. The reality is, if the country wanted to stop violence, they would. They don't want to. And so they're not investing. It's left down to the police like yourself, who are at the bottom. You're having to deal with the people every day. You're genuinely trying to find a way to stop this. But, the orders that come from the top down are not actually helping you. Police aren't being trained like they used to be. Doctors and nurses and everything is not being trained like they used to be. Training in the last 20 years has changed. Police are no longer constables, they're more policy officers, so they're now working for the policy rather than the people, and this has become evident, so much so in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree.
The truth is, when you say, for instance, I would vote Sadiq because the alternative is, not as good, but the truth is they're two wings from one bird. They are still part of the same system. Doesn't matter who gets in, Labour, Conservative, Sadiq, whoever. They are still there by design, by whoever's controlling the strings. And the problem we have is that until people start to take control of, themselves and not allowing these things to happen to them, because we should all have the right to protect ourselves, protect our children, and keep our children home if we have to. Because if the state is not going to look after them, then it is our job to do so. And I know that if my child was going to a school or anywhere with this, I would rather keep them home and protect them, because I can't trust the police. Definitely can't trust the police, because the police, 9 out of 10 of them that I meet, don't even know what the law is. So how can I trust them to do the right thing when 9 out of 10 times they can't even recite the law to me? They can't even recite their oath.
And you do tend to meet quite a lot of police officers in your
quite a few, yeah. And they're not bad. I'm not saying that they're bad, because I've met some very good police. But how can they do a job when they're banging their heads against policies? How can they do a job that they might think, actually, this is wrong, but I can't do anything because I have to follow orders. And if I don't follow orders, I lose my job. And it's more important for me to follow orders than to do what's right.
Can I just to interject there? Policing in the UK is the model of policing in the UK, and I'm no longer a police officer. I've been long gone. Okay, I advise, I research, and do all sorts of things with the police. But policing in the UK, supervision is retrospective, because we actually have a model of policing where we invest the most amount of responsibility and power at the lowest level. So a police constable is expected to use their discretion, understand the law, etc., etc., etc. I would suggest that in the larger cities, you will find a far more hierarchical police service, because they can pass the buck to a supervisor. That doesn't happen in the shires, less so in the shires, etc. And the more green the area, the more likely the police officer has to make all the decisions. The police constable has to make those decisions. So I've got great respect for my former colleagues, etc. But there is a problem about understanding your policies. Policies are good. We need policies in order to make sure things happen.
It depends who those policies are in favour of. We need to always remind ourselves, who does it benefit?
Well, I could do a bit of a history here. The police service in the UK was established to protect the lives and property, i.e. the lives of the people who own the property. 1829, they weren't the slightest bit interested in the likes of you or I.
But who owns the property?
Let's look, it's wonderful debate. Let's just get back to London for the moment, and the knife crime, and Samart Rowley and Sadiq Khan. Ryan, I would say that, despite your wish to see Sadiq Khan re-elected today, and this is going to go out after the results. So by the time this goes out, we'll all know anyway. But from my perspective, as a Londoner, born and bred, now out of London, I consider myself cleansed from the area. Danny is the same. I would say that Sadiq Khan, Samart Rowley, when we look around at what's going on in London, they have failed miserably with a capital F, and they have let down the people of London. Why
100%.
Why on earth? And bearing in mind that if you did a poll today amongst the population of the whole of the United Kingdom, Sadiq Khan would probably rate as one of the lowest in popularity that you could think of. How does this man get re-elected in London? How?
We all know that, don't we, Paul?
Well,
we all know how he gets re-elected.
That's the next question. So
well, I've got to take you back to who runs policing in London. The operational aspect of policing in London is Sir Mark Rowley.
And he is governed by his bosses.
Oh, absolutely. But in each and every area, there's a police crime commissioner, and the police crime commissioner has responsibilities. But the operational aspect of policing, it's fiercely protected, is only done by police officers. So Sir Mark Rowley is responsible for the policing of London. Has Sir Mark Rowley truly tackled and worked with partnerships to tackle the causes of all these issues we're talking about? I think the resounding answer is no. I think that's absolutely has not done that. There's been lots and lots of hot air. I haven't actually seen the actions come out of this. Now, if we're talking about with regard to knife crime, 25, it's about 25% of knife crime is as a result of street violence. Okay, you've got domestic knife crime, which makes up the largest amount, obviously, but about family issues, etc. But street violence is about 25%. Now that's gang related, most of that. So we've got to start looking at why are these youngsters involved in gangs. Now, actually, Danny had it absolutely on the nail. We're talking about youngsters who have lost any direction. They have no sense of belonging, etc.
A lot of the time from a broken family.
Absolutely. We're talking fragmented families, fractured families, all the terms you can think of. And I'm not going to blame it on, but the trouble is, in past governments, they blamed it on the mothers. Single mums get the blame. The reality is,
when they're often the only ones left present.
Absolutely, absolutely. But previously, they're the ones who were then targeted. Now, we need to start tackling why people want to become members of gangs, etc. So gang violence makes up about 15%. So if you add the 15% with the street violence, you're talking about almost you're looking at 38% of knife crime is committed by street violence and gangs. That's a huge percentage. Now that's where we should be targeting. And it's targeting the cause of why youngsters are getting involved. That's why we need more people, as Danny's been talking about, the person he's talking about. We need far more people in the community who are positive for the youngsters and offer them hope. Now, if you go into some of these communities, I was down in London my last time I was down, speaking with people, and I'm down next week, and I'm going to hear exactly the same. They've got absolutely no opportunities whatsoever, or they don't perceive they have any opportunities. If you find out what their vision of success is, it will be the gang leader.
Who drives around in the flash car with the nice watches, with the nice women, with the money.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because they don't see mainstream society as something they can reach.
This is what Danny and I were saying the other night, is that if Sadiq Khan cared as much as he likes to make out he cares, this money that he's taking in from Ulis, etc., which is rumoured to be millions and millions of pounds. Let's see 25 new boxing clubs opened up around London. Let's see, 50 new AstroTurf football pitches placed around the city of London. Let's find new clubs. Let's do something positive with that money instead of it going wherever. I mean, I don't even know. I haven't got a clue where it goes, but I know where it doesn't go.
I'm going to agree 100% with you. Okay, the Tory policy of ULEZ was fantastic, in my opinion, if it's used properly.
Yeah. So let me go back to the controversial question.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that Sadiq Khan is so goddamn unpopular amongst the population, why will he almost certainly storm home to a victory today? Now, I'm going to say what I think. I think Sadiq Khan will win today for one reason and one reason only, from a sectarian viewpoint. And I find that to be very, very, very worrying.
London is one of the most diverse cities on the planet. Is he going to get a large percentage of vote from people of colour, etc.? Chances are he will. I think it's going to be a lot closer than you may think. I think the Tory candidate, you just have to listen to her, follow her tweets, etc. Well, she's done everything she can to put people like myself off her. I don't have a vote in London. She's, quite frankly, quite odious in her opinions. So Sadiq may be all the things you're saying, but he doesn't go around abusing people.
Doesn't he?
I'm not sure about that one.
As I said it,
Oh, Laura, get stuck
I
in.
could have bitten off a bit of my tongue at the same time.
Get
So
stuck in, Laura.
I was just thinking about the rather amusing Trump balloon, but I thought it was rather childish.
I mean, look, here's the thing, Ruan. Look, the bottom line is this. If London looked like it did 25 years ago, Sadiq Khan would I don't think you have to put a deposit in for a mayoral candidate, but anyway, whatever. But we'll use the analogy. If London looked like it looked 25, 30 years ago, he'd lose his deposit. Today, he's probably going to win the election. That tells us that the indigenous population of London has been replaced. And for me,
no. I think you're making 2 and 2 equal 10.
Go on, tell me how. Because every Londoner I know now doesn't live in London.
Oh no, of course.
I've got an example. Can I? I actually have my own example here. I used to live in Woolwich, border Woolwich, Charlton, and when I was 13, 14, I used to go to school in Blackheath. The school's not there anymore. In fact, I was at school with Stephen Lawrence. We used to go to school together. We were in the same class. We used to walk home together. Same school. Now, and it was very multicultural, my school. Considering 1986, it was actually very multicultural. But I could walk in 2, 3 o'clock in the morning as a 15-year-old girl. We used to all walk, because, you didn't have parents giving you a lift then because it wasn't the done thing. But we were safe. We used to go out together. At the time, a lot of us used to go clubbing, pretending we were 21 when we were only 15. We used to do a lot of that. You guys can relate to that. We were safe. By the time I think I was 20, I could no longer walk in Woolwich because there was knife crime. There was extreme theft.
Laura,
abuse.
to be fair, I must say this, Stephen Lawrence didn't walk safe, did he?
No, he didn't. Absolutely, he didn't.
He became a victim. So, we must get this right.
Yeah, but that was a whole completely different story, which obviously I'm not going to talk about here. That was a completely different story. But on the whole, again, that was gang related. But on the whole, there's always been gangs, but they're just getting bigger and stronger.
Bigger and bigger,
because obviously gangs are formed where you have different beliefs, different religions, different colours, different everything. And so everyone starts to form these gangs and they're getting bigger and bigger. But generally, everything was fine. I used to go to Greenwich, I used to go to Charlton, to Woolwich, all these areas, which now you can't do that. Past 7, 8 o'clock at night, you do not want to be outside. When I was 20, I remember back then, there was an huge influx of Somalians that had been moved in, and it was absolutely dangerous to go out in Woolwich. Now, it's completely changed, and that was only a matter of sort of 6 years, and nobody could go out anymore. So, firsthand...
Would you accept that, what Laura's saying?
I certainly accept what's being said. It's about, but I take it back. It's not about the racialization aspect. It's about the commonality. So people will come together because of common issues, etc. There are also, if you go to Birmingham, etc., there are multi-ethnic gangs. They're equally vicious. They're not less vicious because they're multi-ethnic. These gangs are. We need to resolve the gang issue. Whomever is party to it, it's the violence just starts to escalate. Because I was just watching some just earlier on actually, and it was about those young guys who are members of gangs, and they were saying there's a need to always better the last person. So you've got this escalation of violence going on and on and on. So we've got to tackle, and this is what I'm saying, it's about investment again. It's about really investing in. And Laura, I totally agree with you. There is a them and us in this country. I have said it numerous times.
It shouldn't be. But it's been done
bigger.
by design.
Yes,
it's bigger, and ultimately, but equally, when you talk about where it's come from, we talk about it. We're faced with this now. But the rights from the family, from the mother, father, extended family have actually been removed from us, because all of a sudden children have these rights, and children know they've got these rights, and the schools teach them they've got these rights, to the point that if a 13-year-old wants to date a 50-year-old, well, she's got rights or he's got rights. If they want to decide to have at 13 a vaccine, which the parents might not agree with, well, they've got rights. They've had Gillett competency, where our children are being given rights when they don't understand what they're going to be doing, and we as parents have had any authority taken away from us. Why has this happened? Simple. The family unit has been destroyed, all by design.
By design.
And
dead right.
It's absolutely by design. Women's rights. And now I'm not here to say women shouldn't have rights to work, but it was all done by design, because the Rockefellers, the people in charge, funded women's lib, because they could then tax two people. They could tax the men and the women. But back then, the man could go to work and earn a wage for the family. The woman didn't need to. If she wanted to, she could. But now we have to have women who've given birth, and 6 weeks later they need to go back to work, because we become dependent on things we don't need, and mortgages and cars and things we want that don't need, and we've got to pay for them. So you have to have two people to work. Even if you don't have that, just to try and make a living on a monthly wage, you need two of you. So mothers are forced to go to work. And if you're not going to work, you're looked upon like you're a failure. If you want to be a stay-at-home mum, you're still looked upon as though you're not achieving anything in life, because you're just, And that's another reason why families being destroyed, because there's no mum and dad there to look after the children. If you can make a good living and you can put your kids in clubs Monday to Friday and have nannies, then that's different. The average person can't do that. So their kids come home from school and roam the streets, and they find their own family, because there's no extended family. There's no support, community support. Communities have been replaced by societies. Society doesn't give a rat's ass about anything but money. So we've replaced family values and communities with society, and we're allowing other people like the police, who are, you guys, are trying to do a good job. But why should it be up to you to raise our children? Why should it be to the government to raise our children and tell our children how we are the parents, how we should raise our children? Why do I need to send my child to school? I can teach my child at home, yet I'm being forced to send them to school.
I agree with aspects of what you've said there. There is a breakdown, and if you look at society in general, if you look at the after schools activities, the clubs, etc., where are they now? They've because of austerity and other reasons, they've been slashed. They've
all been cold.
Okay,
yeah.
they're gone, and we desperately need to put that back in. We've got to put that sense of belonging back into communities, and that's going to require investment. And we've not had governments of all flavours for a number of decades now that has been truly committed to actually embedding those things back into communities.
Well, I think now we can definitely agree on. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think about today's chat. We could carry on all night. If you think today's video has been a bit controversial, wait until you see the next one. We're going to leave it there, guys, because we're overrunning already. Rohan, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Laura, as always, you're a superstar. Don't forget to nip over to Laura's channel, Laura Nina, and subscribe. Danny, thank you so much there from sunny Spain. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe as well, people. Thanks very much. All the best.